As 2024 comes to an end, and we are now in our fourth year of this podcast, I thought it would be fun to replay our single most popular episode. We pulled the numbers, and I was thrilled to see that it is episode 26, 5 Myths About the Crib to Bed Transition. I was thrilled that it is this particular episode because transitioning your child from a crib to a bed is a massive transition. And it's a transition that can easily and sometimes unexpectedly go sideways. I think a big reason it goes sideways is because this transition does not get talked about enough when we talk about sleep regression triggers. And children who sleep well may be triggered by this transition, or children who aren't sleeping well may spiral even more. I recorded this episode to help you avoid switching your child to a bed and then later thinking to yourself, ugh, if I had only known ... This is the episode that can help you avoid a massive sleep regression. So, enjoy the replay of my most listened to episode during the first 3 years of this podcast. And if you'd like a step-by-step plan for a smooth transition, I have created a workshop that I created after initially recording this episode. It's called How to Prepare Your Child for a Smooth Crib to Bed Transition, and we'll share a link in the show notes. If you still have a child in the crib, whether they are an infant, toddler, or preschooler, I hope that you'll listen to this episode and share it with your friends. I often tell people that one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I can give them is to keep their child in the crib longer than they think they need to. In today's episode, I'm going to share 5 myths about the crib to bed transition. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of 2. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. I was recently in California for a business conference, and as I sat chatting with some folks, a mom asked me what age I recommend switching children from the crib to a bed. When I told her that I didn't recommend making that switch before her child was 3 years old, and I let her know that I kept my girls in the crib until they turned 4, she was surprised. I explained why, and she thanked me because her parents had been pressuring her to transition her 2-year-old out of the crib. I hear this all the time. Someone pressuring or encouraging parents to switch a child from the crib to the bed. After listening to today's episode, you're going to be ready to respond to anyone who pressures you to ditch the crib, and hopefully you'll be inspired to keep your child sleeping in their crib at least until the age of 2. Okay, let's dive in. The first common myth that I hear is that your child will be more comfortable in a bed and or less resistant to sleep if they get to switch to that big kid bed because maybe they're no longer liking their crib. I promise you that if you have a toddler or preschooler who is resisting sleep or acting like they no longer like their bed, transitioning out of the crib will not make those struggles go away. Yes, if you're lucky, it's possible that there will be a honeymoon period of maybe a couple days, maybe up to 2 weeks, where your child stays in their new bed. But more often than not, that wears off, and then you just have a different and probably more difficult sleep situation on your hands. It's important to understand that young children are impulsive. In fact, the part of the brain that gives children more impulse control is not well developed before the age of 3. This is part of the reason that we see them experiencing hitting without thinking or biting. They're just kind of impulsive. So when you tuck them in at night and then you try to walk out of the room, or if they wake up in the middle of the night and you're not there, their impulse may be to get right out of bed. And if they don't have that crib with those sides as a boundary, that's exactly what they're going to do. So if you have a toddler or preschooler struggling with sleep, even if they are over the age of 3, I recommend addressing the sleep struggles long before you address moving them to the bed, and then make a well planned transition to that bed. And just know that if you transition them between the age of 3 and 4, as each month goes by after the age of 3, they're gaining more and more impulse control, which sets them up to naturally have an easier time making that transition. The second myth is that it's a good idea to transition your child to the bed before a new baby arrives. Y'all, preparing to bring a new baby home can come with a lot of changes. You may be switching bedrooms around, you may be buying new furniture for an additional nursery, etc. When parents are expecting another baby and they still have a baby who's in a crib or a toddler or a preschooler, it can be very tempting to try to avoid buying a second crib and instead moving ahead with transitioning your older child out of the crib and into a bed. There are several reasons that I don't recommend this. For one, there are already enough changes that your child is going to be facing. Taking away the security of their crib does not need to be an added change. If you transition your child before they are ready to move out of the crib, and then you throw a new baby into the mix, who, by the way, is guaranteed to be up during the night, the chances of you ending up with 2 children up during the night is significantly higher. The only thing more exhausting than having a newborn who's up during the night is having a newborn who's up and another child who's up as well. And when parents mention that they don't want to buy another crib, I always have to point out that your new baby could sleep in a pack and play that you already have, or you could borrow one from a friend until your older child is between the age of 3 and 4. Or you can buy a great crib from IKEA for $100. I don't know about you, but I think maintaining healthy sleep habits for your older child is absolutely worth $100. Okay, on to the third myth. Your child sleeps well on a mat or a cot at daycare or preschool, and you've been told that that is a sign that they are ready for the responsibility of a bed. First of all, can we all just take a second to talk about how amazing it is that daycares and schools get our tiny little nuggets to nap on a mat or on a cot at a really young age? Even after having my own kids do well sleeping on a mat or at a cot at daycare or when they got into preschool, and after working with literally hundreds of toddlers who also did well sleeping on a mat or cot before they were 18 months old, I still remained shocked and incredibly impressed that kids make this transition so smoothly at daycare and at preschool. It's actually pretty rare that I work with a child who has significant issues learning how to nap on that mat or cot. I'm convinced that daycares and schools have so much success with this because they are very clear about their expectations from the teachers, and there's a lot of consistent process and steps related to it. And I think there's just some peer pressure because all the other kids are doing it. And what I do know without a shadow of a doubt is that whether or not a child sleeps well on a mat or a cot at daycare or at school has absolutely nothing to do with how ready they are to transition out of the crib at home. Let me say this again for those of you in the back. I want you to hear me. Your child sleeping well on a mat or a cot at daycare is not an indicator that they are ready to ditch their crib at home. If you have a child who sleeps well at daycare or at school on that mat or that cot, just continue to be amazed and grateful for those solid naps, but forge ahead with that crib at home. The fourth myth is that it's more difficult or impossible to potty train a child who is still in their crib. If you haven't conquered potty training yet, I recommend you listen to episode 11, where I talk through my thoughts on potty training and sleep. But I want to assure you that you can absolutely potty train your child and keep them in the crib. I potty trained Addison when she was about 28 months old, and Ainsley when she was closer to 3 years old, because I wasn't as much of an overachiever with my second. And as I mentioned earlier, they were in their cribs until they each turned 4 years old. And I did not need to get them out of their crib during the night for potty breaks. Yes, there may be some nights where you will need to run in and grab your child out of the crib so that they can use the bathroom. But even if they were in a bed, they are most likely still going to wake you up for assistance if they have to go to the bathroom during the night. I'm going to be honest, I don't think I know any kids under the age of 3 who will get up in the middle of the night, take themselves to the bathroom, get themselves redressed, and put themselves back to bed. So, either way, if you have a child under the age of 3 who ends up needing to go to the bathroom during the night, which they all won't need to, but if you do have one that needs to, you're going to be up helping them whether they are in the crib or in the bed. And if they're in the bed and they don't have that boundary of the crib, it's likely that you're going to be up helping them more than you actually need to. So, again, check out episode 11 for my advice on setting your child up for sleep success when you potty train, because I'll go into some more details there. And I will also note that you don't want to potty train and switch out of the crib at the same time or in the same window. Potty training and switching to a bed are really big transition points in our kids' lives. I recommend completing one before the other. And since I recommend transitioning out of the crib between the age of 3 and 4, that means that you'll probably be doing potty train before you make the transition out of the crib. But even if your 3-year-old isn't potty trained, I would still be prioritizing getting that done and then transitioning to the bed. The final common myth I want to touch on today is the idea that a child who has climbed out of their crib is ready to transition to a bed. Between 18 and 30 months old, many children will get the very unfortunate idea that they should climb out of that crib. If your child hasn't climbed out of the crib yet, the first thing I want you to do is put them in a sleep sack. Or if they have climbed out but weren't in a sleep sack, go ahead and put them in one now. Sleep sacks are safe, wearable blankets. Yes, that is all fine and dandy. But the biggest reason I truly love a sleep sack is because they stop the majority of children from climbing out of the crib. I'll link to my favorite sleep sack in the show notes. This is one that can easily be used for preschoolers because it's nice and long. And the way it fits, it's hard for them to take off on their own. If your child has taken off their sleep sack, find one that has a zipper, not any shoulder straps, and put it in the back. And that way they can't reach it to unzip it very well. So the one I'll link to is set up that way. So to help avoid or end climbing out of the crib, you also want to make sure the mattress is on its lowest setting. If your child has a crib where one of the sides is taller than the other, so one of the long sides is taller than the other, you can also spin the crib around so the shorter side is up against the wall, so opposite of how it would typically be set up. And if you have a child that is 18 months or older who is not going to bed well or sleepy through the night at this exact moment, but they haven't climbed out of the crib, I strongly encourage you to address that issue as soon as possible so that they can be happily and confidently sleeping in their crib before that little idea of climbing out develops. If they are starting to act like they're going to climb out, I also recommend keeping a close eye on them with a monitor. As soon as you see them attempting to climb out, go ahead and walk in their room and firmly say, no, 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 don't do that. You're going to get hurt. Sometimes you can just startle them just enough that they will not keep trying to climb out. Addison, my oldest, was not in a sleep sack when she was 2, and she started climbing out of her crib probably around the age of 2.5. She was petite, but very coordinated, so she consistently could flip herself up over the railing and land on her feet. So I wasn't too worried about her getting hurt, and the room was carpeted, and she was just so agile. So I just went to putting her back in the crib over and over again. I did it for a handful of days. I would fairly nonchalantly, but somewhat sternly say, no, 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 time to be in your crib. It's time to sleep. And then I would just put her back over and over and over again. And after a handful of days, she just stopped getting out and she never climbed out again before we transitioned her at the age of 4. Now, I realize there are some kids who will climb out of the crib even if they have a sleep sack on and the mattress on the lowest setting. And some daredevil children who will also push up and just do a head dive right out of the crib or balance across the railing in a very dangerous way. You guys wouldn't believe the little videos that I have seen that people have sent me. Obviously, if you don't think you could safely keep your child in the crib, you may need to make the transition before they are 3 years old. But again, if at all possible, you want to pull out all the stops to keep them in the crib so that you can intentionally transition them out when they are ready and prepared to navigate having the freedom of a bed. Well, there you have it. Those are the 5 most common myths that I hear about when it comes to transitioning children out of their cribs. If your little one is still in the crib, I hope this episode has helped convince you to keep them in the crib as long as you safely can. And if you have a 2.5 to 5-year-old who's struggling with their sleep, whether they're still in the crib or no longer in the crib, and you're looking for some help, I'll be offering a group coaching program at the end of this month, the last week of April. If you enroll, you'll get access to my new preschool sleep course and the opportunity to join me on 6 different Zoom support calls. If you're interested in learning more, you can shoot me a DM on Instagram at Sleep and Wellness Coach or follow the link in the show notes at sleepandwellnesscoach.com/episode-26. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you'll join me again here next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.